Yeah, cool. Okay, hello and welcome to episode 4, I believe, of Getting Started with Modular Synths, my very casually titled series of live streams. They end up being slight interviews with the guests, but all based around getting into synths, experiences that we've had since getting into modular synths, things we wish we knew when we got into synths that we maybe didn't. Taking live questions. It's very much about the live chat as much as anything else. But if you are watching this after the live stream and you want to leave a question in the comments, either I'll answer or Noir will answer as well. How should I introduce you? Are you happy with the kind of username or real name? What do you like?
I don't think anyone actually knows the real name, so Stephen is the real name.
Yeah. I left you to say that. I didn't want to say it if it was like a secret.
No, it's not that serious.
No, it's same with Milo Melodies. Funnily, he was these magic hands doing modular videos, and he'd never kind of been seen. His face wasn't part of it, and I think he got kind of caught out when his day job doing some stuff for source distribution. People were like, that's Milo Melodies, and it was me and him in a video, and they were like, I recognize these two voices, but I've never seen their faces. They kind of outed each other as who we really are. But yeah, Noir at Blanc Vie, presuming I've said that right, maker of some very good synth videos. I put up a quick image for people that don't recognize the channel or people that need a refresher. How are you?
Doing good. It's my first time doing sort of a dual stream slash thing. So, you know, I'm weird. I'm like weird. So yeah, try to be. I don't know. I try to be good, but about live things. But sometimes I'm bad. Hence why I like script all my videos, because I can't formulate well thought out sentences like on the fly sometimes. So
neither can I, and I embarrass myself. I'm not saying you are, but I certainly won't do myself any favors doing this live. But no, it's funny you mentioned scripting the videos. The content is extremely well done in terms of shot, lighting, camera angles, editing. I'm sure, you know, the amount of work that must go into this stuff for making this quality content is not to kind of be brushed aside in any way. But you've kind of had a bit of a break. You've been back with some other videos. You make a lot of content, not just modular, which is nice. It's more about, I feel it's more about you as a musician. This is about you and sharing your experiences and how the gear's influenced a certain approach to music or playing music or interacting with it. I guess first question, what led you into modular, or what was a bit of the brief history before you kind of stumbled onto modular synths?
I don't think I actually knew about modular until, oh, you know what? No, back in 2008, modular like existed, but I didn't know what it was. A producer friend of mine, his name's Dewan Parker. He was Dr. Dre's keyboard player for quite a while. He still does a lot of key work, and he went to Berkeley where I went, and he had a whole Dofer like setup back in like 2008, and I didn't know what the hell it was. So I just kind of, you know, brush it off as like something that only obviously Dr. Dre's keyboard player can afford. And I went on and didn't really do anything until the Moog Mother 32 came out. And honestly, that was the first time I had seen an all-in-one voice. And because of that, it really made me understand, like, I mean, I think I said in another video before, it's a really good way to just put your toe into the water of modular, because you don't necessarily, you don't have to know a lot. You just need one of those, and you can start trying to understand how modular works. I'm not saying it's the perfect one, but it helped me fill up my smaller rack, and it kind of just became the voice, the building block of it or whatnot.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I imagine a lot of people in the chat or listening afterwards, if they're not watching live, the Mother 32 will have been the kind of catalyst for the whole thing, or the thing that made them understand it more, maybe if they did have a handful of modules already. That's a good one for the chat, actually. Who got into modular? I'd be interested to see the responses, so type away, people watching live. Who kind of got into modular through semi-modular synths, be it the Arturia stuff, or I guess now with the Neutron from Behringer, or any other kind of gear. There's some Pittsburgh stuff, lots of semi-modular stuff around. Dual Tracks, who also create some very nice content, says it was the dope for dark time and dark energy. So the dope for voice and the dope for sequencer. I think you're right, because you can just plug in a MIDI cable or just use a sequencer on the Mother 32 and take an output to wherever, or headphones. It kind of invites a little bit of exploration.
Yeah.
So what came next? What happened with, so you've got the Mother 32, you're playing around, exploring. There's all those inputs. I presume you want something more to plug into them. What was the kind of next stage?
I think, oh, you know what? Actually, before the Mother 32, I had the Dreadbox Erebus, and that kind of let me understand a little bit of patching behind the scenes or whatnot. It was just something different, right? And so, oh yeah, Perfect Circuit, where I think a lot of people know Perfect Circuit from not just the videos, but people have purchased things from them.
Yeah.
Perfect Circuit moved from far away. They used to be up north from me. They moved literally 5 or less than 10 minutes down the street from where I live. And that really gave me the opportunity to talk to the guys who worked at Perfect Circuit and build my rack, for better or worse, from them, because I could go in and kind of mess with stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I really just asked them, like, hey, what should I buy? And, you know, they gave me some good suggestions. It was just so expensive. I couldn't believe it, how expensive it could get to have modular. Because, yeah, I bought 2 of the Mother 32s just right off the bat. Like, I bought, literally, I think I had, should I say, number 19 and 20 from the factory. Like, that's how fast I went and got them from the local store. And yeah, I just bought the Maths, and I bought the Herb Verb, and I bought, I think I had Maths, Herb Verb, and then I bought a clock divider, and that was it.
So you went in pretty deep with maths. Yeah, kind of, you know, for someone new to it. I know it comes up all the time. Get a maths, figure out what it does. It's going to help the learning of the whole thing, which is very true. If you can start to get your head around maths, a lot of it does apply elsewhere. But it's a pretty deep end to kind of jump straight into. How did you find it?
Maths.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, did it in any way, was that off-putting? Was it kind of like, what have I got myself in for? The kind of technical level from Mother 32 to maths, or was it strangely inviting that it's quite complicated? Or
inviting is not the word. I would say I basically was like, does it have, like, can it do an LFO?
Yeah.
And it can. It has the cycle, I think, which is, yeah, it has the cycle button. And I'm not gonna lie, I still probably use the cycle button more than any other function on the Maths. Like, you know, people hated me. I made the video, like the Modular Minute, about Maths, and people constantly were saying, like, you're wrong, like, you don't know what the Maths is, and I totally, you know, I agree.
But that's just kind of people on the internet, you know, in terms of the comments. I got flack for, I've only just owned a maths for about a month.
Wait, you just got one?
Yeah, like, and I bought it just for the thing of, so I could post it and go, yeah, I've got a maths. I didn't really, I mean, the maths is super useful, and strangely, after being into it for a few years, it felt like when you're stood in front of someone else's system and you're trying to patch and you're thinking, where's the envelopes or where are the VCAs? I can't figure out how to shut, just because you don't know where anything is. It's the first time playing around. And maths always felt like a kind of home to go to, because I'd had time. This is years into it. I certainly didn't get maths straight away. At the time, I played on one quite early on. It was definitely too complicated for me to start with. But I just picked one up recently, very cheap, secondhand from a friend. I was like, yeah, this is going to be useful. If I'm putting a small case together, this is probably going to be useful. And at some point, I should probably make a video, you know, the 20 things that maths can do, even though there's so many of those videos, people keep doing them and they keep doing fairly well. So part of me was like, I could buy this and make a video that will do quite well, and then I can sell it. But I don't think I'll sell it. I quite like maths, to be honest. I have other things that do it at this point, you know, years into it. But just thinking about the semi-modular thing again, do you think that was the right way to go? Was that the kind of best way in? Because there's quite a few people. I'll pull the chat window up.
Is that Bo? Bo's in the...
Yeah, we've got Bo Beats. I haven't seen his latest thing. Coffee chats come up as soon as Bo's got into the chat.
Hey, I got coffee. Yeah. I can do coffee too.
Yeah, I went to go make coffee just because I knew Bo was going to come into the chat. But yeah, I mean, we've got dual tracks there. Dope for Dark Time, Dark Energy, which was around quite a few years before the Mud 32. A couple of people saying they got the Mud 32. Others had the Erebus, the Roland SEO2. I guess there's some patch points on that. Mini Brew, MS20, then Modular, Micro Brew, the Boog, the Behringer Moog or Moog. I don't know whether Boog is Boog or Boog, based on the Moog being Moog or Moog. The Behringer Model D got kind of titled the Boog or the Boog. I guess people crushing on Uli Behringer want it to be the Boog, as in they're booing it. God knows. Anyway, Pittsburgh Modular System. You know, there's loads of people in there started that way. Do you feel, me jumping back on track, do you feel that's the best way to get into it, having got into modular some time ago?
Semi-modular just kind of gives you, at least for me, it gives you more of the stepping stones all in one module. You know, I mean, if you don't, at least for me, this is coming from my exact experience, I literally didn't know what a modular was. I had seen them, but, you know, I would say this, I didn't even get good on a modular until like a year after I put a bunch of stuff in the rack. Like I literally just bought stuff because, you know, for some reason at this time in my life, I had like $3,000 that I just couldn't not spend on stuff. Yeah. And I just literally went and bought, I mean, the whole little system cost like $3,000. And I didn't even know, I just plugged things in. It sounded stupid, but the Modular 32 is great because the sequencer is so intuitive. And so even if you're not making something super complex, you can make something that sounds good, and that can make you go forward a little bit more. You know, it can push you to say, oh, I'd like to do something with this, right? Whereas if you go fully modular, sometimes I think you end up coming out with something very, you might not like it, yeah, but you don't know how to not make it sound like that, because even things like a quantizer, whatnot, right? I didn't own a quantizer. I think I even asked you about a quantizer a few months ago. I didn't own one. And with the Mother 32 being semi-modular, you don't necessarily need the quantizer, like, and you can make things that sound, you know, melodic very simply.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And yeah, we may have chatted about that a while ago. But yeah, the thing that, same for me, things like, I mean, I didn't go the semi-modular route. My route was, I just got fed up of producing in the box. I'd been releasing dance music for some time, making sample packs. I've kind of been through all this before, so I won't get too heavy into my background, but making sample packs for a couple of the bigger companies and then some music library stuff. And I wanted to get out of the screen effectively and the mouse and the keyboard. Went through vintage synths, stuff like the DSi Morpho was kind of my modern desktop synth kind of experience. And eventually kind of, I was plugging guitar pedals in and reamping synth through guitar amps and having loads of fun making quite kind of dirty electro dance stuff about 2010, 2011. And from then on, I kind of ended up going modular, and it was a case of getting a box, just a low-cost for case, oscillator, a filter. I'm really drooling over the oscillator and the filter, the kind of sexy bits of the whole thing. And I didn't get a VCA, and then I was like, well, why can't I shut the sound off? All right, I need an envelope. And I've been releasing stuff that I'm still quite proud of. I mean, I've no ego about any of this stuff, but it wasn't like everything before that was bad. So I kind of felt like I knew synths to some degree. But then I quickly realized I didn't. Because you kind of, you see a Juno or a 101 and you kind of follow the signal path along. Okay, here's the modulator, the oscillator, the filter, and there's an envelope at the end. So I thought, oh, I'll just get an envelope. I just run my sound through the envelope. And then I'm like, well, it doesn't do anything when I plug the oscillator into it. And it's like, I didn't know what a VCA was, which I think is typical thing of why won't this thing shut up? Like, it just drones all the time, even when I'm pressing a key into my MIDI interface. And it probably would have been helpful to go semi-modular, because I think having the patch bay, like you said, you can get back to making something musical. But then there's all this stuff and this kind of intrigue on the Mother 32 of, I wonder what plugging this into there does, or bringing in this external thing, and it's very expandable as well. One extra filter or one extra oscillator, and it will all talk to each other very nicely. It was more expensive to make that initial sound just going kind of fully modular, and more of banging my head against the wall as well. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely really like the ability to have the amp plugged out into, say, your interface or some headphones or whatnot, and then just start taking out a patch of what you patched into and plugging into something else. And then if you didn't hear anything, you knew you made a mistake, right? Because it's all built into one interface. Whereas sometimes with like modular, fully modular, you think that it could be a technical problem. You don't just realize that, like, oh, this is just, you plugged into an output. You plugged out of something into another output, and obviously you're not going to get something out of that. So I like the ability to have just a bunch of patch points that may or may not do something cool, but you know that it's still working regardless of where you're going to patch in. Like, there's nothing that you accidentally did. Probably wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a couple of things that I'll just pull up from the chat questions. Marius asked, I guess for both of us, you can take it first. Did you try software modular before going semi-modular? And he's asked any of us. So I guess people in the chat or us. I think you've said no effectively, but did you try any software modular beforehand, or have you tried any since?
I think we talked about this once before, where I actually used Reason. Reason was the second software that I got into. I got Cubase when I was, like, in college, I guess, before college. But yeah, the whole using patch points within Reason made modular make more sense. Now, you know, most of the stuff in Reason is behind the rack, but you're still getting so many of the same types of outputs. I always think of, like, Subtractor as a great example of how a modular synth works inside of Reason. Like, there's other synths like Thor inside of Reason, and but Subtractor's just it's literally like named after subtractive synthesis, like, so it's just basically waveforms, very simple waveforms, very simple wave shaping, envelopes, and out. The way that the envelopes are set up, the ADSR also makes it make more sense to at least me. So, I did use Reason, and that was my only software synthesis. I don't think when I started, what was out then? What's that one? I talked about it in videos, and I'm failing now. Rack, VCV Rack, yeah,
more recently.
Yeah, that wasn't out or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, similar thing. Cubase was the first thing. I think it was VST3, I think. And then we had Reason 2.5 at school when I was about 16.
VST3?
Yeah, and we had to rewire at school. I remember being like 15 in music class and being told, you know, we had to score everything in Sibelius and we had to rewire Cubase to do this, and the PCs were terrible. Like, you couldn't record anything on it. I didn't get it. It was funnily, you mentioned Reason. Going back to Reason, I had to give for a job I went for as a music technology teacher at A level, which is kind of post 16. Here in the UK, that's college level, but not quite the same as American college level. I think that's more in line with our university status, kind of post 16 education stuff. And they said we use Reason, and I think they were on Reason 4, and they said, we'd like you to set the class a challenge. Part of the interview is you taking the class. It's only for 30 minutes, but we want you to set a lesson. So I was scrambling around, you know, trying to get friends to give me a copy of Reason, or can I come and crash at your place tonight and I'm going to do this. And it, having got into, I wasn't into modular at the time, but I'd been more into pedals and I'd seen expression ins and things. It started to make Reason make a bit more sense. And then fast forward, you know, 5, 6, 10 years on top of that, it now all makes sense. That thing that I used to hit tab on the keyboard and flip the rack.
Yeah.
We'd have CV and gate, and like you said, the LFO waves coming out, and I was like, oh, I could have put that LFO to that filter cutoff, or that's what that would have done, or I only managed to kind of break stuff on it when I was younger. I never got anything out of it. But in terms of software modular, I'd not tried anything either. VCV rack wasn't a thing. I'd used Max MSP a little bit in university for a sound design module that I took. So the idea of blocks and tying blocks together kind of made sense. But I did drop that module after a year. I didn't follow it all the way through. There was my degree was great. I could cherry pick modules year on year. And I wanted to do all sorts of different things. And I didn't follow it forward. I wish I would have done. I would like to know Max MSP a bit better and Reactor and stuff like that. But I think the modular would feedback. I think I'd understand it a bit better now. Another question from Rock Guitar Power. Any specific quantizers that we would recommend, seeing as that came up? What about you?
I only have the 2 HP tune module, which I assume is an okay quantizer. I will say I don't use it very much, only because I prefer to use the KB1 because it works. It just is easier for me to sequence off that, and I don't really quantize a lot. But yeah, I don't know. You know this a lot more than I would.
Quantizers, I mean, yeah, tune from 2 HP is great. The thing that I feel people miss with quantizers, and it makes the whole environment less playable, is you need an attenuator between, certainly like an analog sequencer or like a pressure point. I know you're a big fan of the Make Noise pressure points. I love pressure points, but the top row puts out 8 volts. So if that's for pitch, and if that's 1 volt per octave for pitch, that's 8 octaves. That's like an 88 key keyboard. More, you know, we don't need that. Most musical sequences are within about 2 octaves, I would say. If you think most bass lines, most riffs, mostly, even weird experimental stuff, it's not 8 octaves worth of material. You would have another oscillator tuned up higher if you needed that much range, or if it was an ensemble in real life, or I say real life as if this isn't a real instrument. On acoustic instruments, you'd have different instruments in different regions of pitches. So that's also a personal bugbear of mine when someone will say, oh yeah, I've got this, but it only tracks 5 octaves. And I'm like, well, what are you doing that needs more than 5 octaves? Like, if it needs to be higher, tune the coarse tuning up, and then you've got 5 octaves above the tuning. Like, anyway, I won't get into any ranting. But you need an attenuator. You know, the bottom 2 rows of pressure points are 0 to 5 volts, and that's still too much for me for pitch. So any analog sequencer, I like to just run into an attenuator, kind of half the voltage or more, then go into the quantizer, and then the whole range of the knob on pressure points is playable, and you can fine tune notes and you can jam on it, and you're not jumping 4 octaves above the line you've just carefully done in. And so I feel like that's the missing thing. Anyone wanting to quantize, to me, would suggest that they don't have a quantized source to start with. So you're going to want an attenuator. Most quantizers, unfortunately, don't have that built into the front end. But the 2HP tune's great. The ADAC 207, if you need 4 quantizers, is great. The Ornament and Crime has a very good quad quantizer mode. The Harmoneg from Instruo, if you want 1 quantizer but 4 musically relevant diatonic scale and key following intervals, that's really amazing. You can just throw random into it and always get 7 chords that are always in key. And you can move between them and change chord type and the voicings and the inversions. And whether you know the music theory or not, it invites that to be played with. I think it's a really good module for learning that. Or if you already know it and you go, oh, I want a second inversion of this, it's there. Like, so cool. So I'd recommend the Harmoneg. If you just want a quantizer, that's maybe a little big if you don't need the intervals, because you kind of then need at least 3 other oscillators to get it doing what it should be doing. But yeah,
need a larger Eurorack. That's first off. or I don't. Probably.
Yeah, maybe you don't. One more question, and then I am people in the chat. I'm pulling questions across into a text file, so I'll keep coming back. But one more before we kind of get back into the chat. Liquid Acoustics talking about going kind of fully modular or semi-modular. Said it's too much information for a newbie to buy a case and a power supply or build a case. Yeah, it's tricky, and power. I don't know how you feel about it, but power is a tricky one, and I've been asked several times to do something on power and get people on to talk about it, but I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole. You know, power, if you wire it up wrong, you can kill yourself. If you're going to pull main voltage into a case, like the Meanwell power supplies, super cheap, they're great. I had someone wire them up in that bigger curved case, but it's mains power coming into that case. That's not to be messed with. I mean, my friend installed it. He's very much qualified to do that sort of thing. And then I went and bought a glue gun, and together we hot glue gunned every single point. So you could touch it with a screwdriver and nothing would happen, but I wouldn't have done it myself. I could have soldered it. I could have plugged the wire in and put a bit of solder on, but yeah. And there's misinformation as well, you know, and the user perspective of it all. Some of the cheaper kind of little module power supplies get beaten on all the time by some guys. But I know other guys that gig with those things, and they're not getting noise when they're gigging. So it's like, it's really tricky. So Liquid Acoustics, I'd agree. It is a lot of information to take in, a lot of different experiences, even with the same gear. I don't want to tell someone what the best power is. I can only share my experience, and people take it the wrong way. I think if I make a video on power, it'll be, oh, well, Ben says this, and that might not be someone else's experience, and I'll just get bashed on for it. So
yeah, you know, when I did the Beginner's Guide to Eurorack series, right? The only thing I thought the whole time was, when I started looking for modular stuff, I don't know if the first place I went was YouTube, because there wasn't a ton of stuff here. Like if I'm gonna think back to 2015, that's when I think I bought my Mother 32s and whatnot. Maybe before that. It was a long time ago. The only videos really up were your videos that I could find. Like, if it was weird, it was almost like this this monopoly, which I'm sure you didn't even think about, but it was just like everything I looked up that was modular was a DivKid video, right? And you know, and still to this day, hence why when you said, "Oh, I'm gonna make something about the maths module," I was like, "Oh, good, good. I can watch the video and I can understand." But yeah, I literally talked about power supplies in, like, I think part 2 or part 3, whatever video I made, and I just said, buy one that already is constructed and done by a reputable company that you understand. And I know that that may not be the answer for everyone because things cost money and people can't afford all the same things. But I really just, when it comes to power, just, I mean, I'm putting this as my thing. Just buy one that you already know has a good reputation and that is going to be large enough and powerful enough to do your modules. Like, I don't think it needs to be said more than that from on my end.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's like, you know, if you're starting out and you want to buy a cheap, small little rack thing that you just know is going to work, it's a commercial product. You know, people beat on flying bus boards, and yeah, there is more likely going to be noise with flying bus boards. It's a technical fact that that might happen, but the bottom, I mean, this is a whole mess at the minute. I haven't tidied any of this at all in preparation, but under the mess, the kind of the lower drum kind of bit, it's all ribbon cables in there. And I record videos with that as much as I move through these Dope4 systems with Dope4 power. There's Meanwell in the curved case that had an electrician set up for me. There's a tip-top Uzus in there with the ribbon cables. There's not any more noticeable noise in it. So it's like, well, you know, take that for what you will. The Dope4 stuff's known to be very good.
Yeah, which I agree with.
Yeah. The Meanwells, I did have an issue where I was pulling way too much current on them, and a couple of analog oscillators, I won't name companies because it's the power that was at fault, on me pulling too much power. The tuning drift was horrible, and I was recording it like a 5-minute recording of just a droning triangle, sending it to the company going, why will your oscillator drift like this? Other analog oscillators didn't. And then, you know, typical thing, I should have known to check this already because I've had stuff like this before. They said, well, what cases have you got? Put it in something else. And I was like, all right, yeah, it's me. I'm pulling way too much current on this case. And the issue with that is that the 12-volt power supply is it's no longer 12 volts. It might be 11 volts because you've pulled so much current more than you should. And then tuning goes all over the place. And I think that's probably where they'll all react differently. You know, the Uzus can get quite hot to touch. The actual panel gets quite hot. And there's a little warning on there saying that's normal. It will get warm to touch. You can definitely pull a lot of current on that, more than it suggests, and it's probably not going to do it any good. But yeah, I think for power, you just, you know, buy a Dope4 case is always my thing. And funnily, Ross Lamond that builds beautiful hardwood, he spends a ton of money on wood. Like the way that some of us here might obsess over gear on Reverb or eBay, or, hey man, have you seen there's a 106 like in the town next to us for wherever, let's go pick it up. He's looking at, you know, oh, there's a load of Wenge or bog ash or oak or whatever. And he himself often says, just buy a low-cost Dope4 case. When you're ready and you know what you want to do and you feel like you want to build your instrument, let's work together. I'll build you something completely custom, but there's great power. They're made en masse and they're cheap and they're solid. Go get a low-cost Dope4 case. I don't think they're that low cost in the States, though. I don't think
no case is really low cost in the States except for, at least for me, from what I've seen, is the tip top, whatever the
ending thing, that the rack with the power in.
Yeah, it's like a plastic case, but it's got 104, and it's like forgot what it was.
Is it the Mantis?
Yeah, it's the top Mantis. That's the cheapest one you can get in, and I'll be fully honest. I think that the case price is always the barrier of entry for so many people when they think about modular. And I know for me it was, because I remember picking out all my modules. Like I had the two Mother 32s sitting here without a case. And then I said, oh, I should get a case. And I went to Perfect Circuit and I was like, which case can I get? Like, and I'm thinking 100, 150 bucks. And the cheapest case was the Dope4, which was the smallest one, the 84 HP. And it was like, I think they even gave it to me on a deal, and it was like $380. And I was like, it doesn't make any sound. What's the point? So I always think, hey, you know, pick up whatever. Power, honestly, I hate to say it, but like power is the least creative thing about their whole system anyway. Like just buy, you know, when you're getting a computer, right? Like a power supply is extremely important, but the power supply does not help you write a great dissertation, right? You got to have the software, right? So for me, pick up the case. This case, the Pittsburgh modular thing, I forgot what it was, the structure one. The power supply in this was so much better than other cases I had checked out, and I just trust it. But I don't trust it necessarily because I know anything about power. It's because I trust Pittsburgh or I trust Dofer. Like I just say, okay, that's a company. They can't just be putting out crap. So
yeah, exactly. The last couple of things on power, and I guess we'll move on. If people have questions, I can answer you kind of after the live stream, or we can get into it. I could try and point you to sources. But Wagyu says it feels like power supplies are too expensive versus power supplies for guitar pedals. I mean, the guitar pedal thing's a massive minefield as well. There's loads of people daisy chaining like one-spot power supplies and getting noise. They're often just providing one DC voltage, just usually 9 volts. It's not 2, which doesn't, you know, add a massive component cost, but and there's also a lot less current involved. Most guitar pedals are pulling an amp or more of current. Certainly like analog choruses and delays and things, BBD chips, it's minimal. It's 30, 40 milliamps. Modules, a module can pull that or more, and you will fit 10 plus modules in a case. So, you know, as you start to scale it up, if you look at like the Strymon Zoomer, which is quite a high-end pedal power solution, that's £250, I think, in the UK at the minute. You know, and there's like Eventide power factors and the Seox ones and all these kind of high-end, isolated, really nice pedal power supplies. It's kind of the same for modular. If you've got noise issues with what you've got, you're going to have to look elsewhere if it's bad, but it might not be. Try and talk to people and find people you trust. Like you said with Perfect Circuit, I know very few people are near a store that has modular, but speak to people. It's a really nice community, and I think people will help. Last point on power, Dissonant replied to Wagyu and just said they're not expensive compared to what they're powering, which is kind of true. You know, if a case costs £400, but you fill it with $5,000 worth of gear, yeah, it's kind of relative, I guess.
I will answer Robert's question. He asked which one was this, the structure. I don't know if he asked about exactly this one, but this is the structure. I don't know, two something. It's definitely nothing larger than 2. I was trying to limit how much I could spend money, so I bought a smaller one. And you know, yeah, I don't know. I think this is the 208. I think so, or maybe the 370. I don't know.
Okay, there's one thing I do want to address before we kind of get back into zone experiences and modular stuff. Well, not address, just ask about. Dialogue asked, what do we think of the Qubit Nebulae? Which we'll both chat about in a second. But Dissonant said it feels unfinished. Dissonant, if you can kind of give me some info on that. I don't really know why the Nebulae is unfinished. His suggestion was to get a Morphogene. The Morphogene's fantastic. But the Nebulae, certainly the new one, I think it is finished, right? People seem happy with it. It looks like a great way to play with samples. The fact that time and pitch isn't linked, whereas on the Morphogene it is, because it's all based around this kind of idea of tape. They've both got their advantages. But the Nebulae certainly sounded good in demos. I do have one coming for some footage. It's not here yet, so I don't know when that's going to happen, but I guess I can give a proper rundown of what I think about it in a few weeks. What about you? Any experience with the Nebulae from Qubit?
I went and saw it at NAMM. The Nebulae, I think, like, you know the people at Qubit, like I know them, right? So I guess, you know, Sarah and whatnot, those people. She talked to me about it. I don't actually own any Qubit anything, but it sounded good at NAMM. You know, and I really like all the things that Qubit does in terms of the functionality and whatnot inside of theirs. You know, and hopefully no one from Qubit is watching, but I will say that the only thing that I have against anything Qubit is that I like the look, but I would like it shined up a little bit. I like, you know, this is me being maybe extra critical on the look of their modules, but there's a lot of modules that are like super gorgeous. I don't even know, like Make Noise makes a lot of really beautiful modules. I would like the Nebulae just as a module to look better, and I know this is me just nitpicking. But
it's a personal thing. I mean, you know, Grayscale exists because people didn't want Make Noise panels. That's, I think, Grayscale, or maybe it was the original colors on the 4MS stuff. And this point came up earlier in the live chat about cases that, you know, the Manis from Tip Top is very cheap. It could hold about $5,000 worth of gear, but this whole thing is art, and you want a beautiful case to really build and admire your own instrument, which is for some people, it's not for others. Very functional cases or cheaper cases seem to sell just as well. So I think it's a valid point. It's all about, and to pull it back, I know that I feed the kind of gear lust thing all the time. That's what my channel is doing. I'm hoping people learn from it, and that if I review or do a demo of an LFO, and you think I don't want that LFO, that someone would still watch it and maybe try and patch some of the ideas on their own gear. I know not everybody does. They'll just go, oh, I'm not interested in that. I don't want another envelope. I'll wait till he reviews another filter. That's what I'm looking for next, or whatever. But it's about how you use it and build an instrument, and what music that makes you make. And if it doesn't speak to you, it isn't going to speak to you. That's not to say it's good or bad. You know, some people love playing on a Les Paul. Some people want to play a Strat. You know, whichever one they pick up. You're not going to see Nile Rodgers with a Les Paul. You know?
No.
I don't know why I thought Nile Rodgers. I had Rich Hilton in my head earlier, and then that kind of connection through. But it's that same thing. Like, there was a point where I really wanted a Gretsch style guitar, but I also kind of wanted a Telecaster. And I was in a funk band at the time. There were some rappers, and it was a little bit like the Meters meets kind of the kind of things that like Tribe Called Quest was sampling. It was kind of like jazz band with rappers trying to play and sound like sampled musical kind of hip hop. And I was like, I should just buy a Telecaster. Like, all the funk stuff is the Telecaster. And I went and found one that spoke to me, and my friend was like, why'd you get that color neck? I don't like that. And it's like, well, I like it. That's the one I picked up. It's the one I gravitated towards. So it's a totally valid thing. But neither of us having a Nebulae, I guess we can't go any further into that.
It's a great name for a module. There you go. That's all I can say.
Yeah, they sent out a few with rename, didn't they? Like Patrick O'Brien got a Pobule, I guess. They sent out like custom panels with some names on to people, which I thought was really cool. I like it when companies kind of really reach out to people with stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, wait, there you go, Qubit. You know who you are. You watch this stream. You know, Sarah. You know.
The Divule, or the Noir, or whatever they go with. Just random off point question. Don't answer it if you don't want. I will for me. Ackman MC Space asked how old we were. I'm 29.
8.
Okay, there you go. Quick question, quick answer. So in terms of modular, then we've kind of gone through, you know, semi-modular being the route in, getting the case, the first couple of modules. I mean, before getting into modular musically, what were you doing, and has this found a way into what you were doing, or changed how you've worked at all?
That's a good question, because I think what I get a lot of times is people saying the exact thing to me of like, you know what, I like how your channel doesn't have like, you make it melodic or whatever when you make the sounds or whatnot, right?
Musical,
musical quote. And I think, you know, music modular can be, you know, whatever. Anyway, the point is, like, I was doing all keyboard and production things. Like it was always a produced piece of music, you know, beginning, middle, and end. You know, I produced for a bunch of groups or artists starting way back in like 2005, right? I was like in college when I got the first record on like a label, which was a label out of Texas called oh God, did I just forget the name? Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyway, it's on my wall actually. You know? Oh yeah, on Pluto Records. Sorry. The first record I ever did got on Pluto Records, and that was like 2005. So I was doing a lot of like musical song creation, and it really involved having sessions and pulling up sessions and having things be repeatable and whatnot, right? Yeah. So that being said, when I get to Modular, I remember making this badass patch. This is literally like the third patch I ever made. I fucking killed this patch. And it's actually on an old Instagram I have. I can't make that patch ever again. I don't know what I did. And that was the point in which I realized, like, I know that a lot of people use Modular for a lot of things, but for me, my Modular is like, it's like about pure fun in that moment. I make something great and I love it, and maybe I'll record it or maybe I don't. But I'm just really enjoying my time with the module. And you brought up a good thing about the whole computer and the screen and whatnot. The Modular is like the most fun that I have with music and no menus. That means so much to me, because from making music to moving into like doing a lot of professional video work and whatnot, the screen is always like you're staring at the screen all the time, and I don't like the screen, to be honest. So for me, yeah. And then also like the KB1, like the KB1 is like, that's like the coolest module ever for me, because it's what I understand. So yeah, that's literally, I don't make a lot of music with my Modular. I make a lot of fun, enjoyable like time.
Yeah.
With it.
Yeah, I was at there's a family-friendly festival here in the UK called Deer Shed. It's strange in that there's a massive absence of kind of 18 to 30-year-olds and taking drugs at the front of the, right in front of the main stage, and the whole kind of usual festival is not really there. So there's a lot of kids and their parents, and there's a science tent, and me and Milo Melodies were asked to go and work in the science tent and showcase Modular. It's a very forward-thinking festival. It's really well run. They had guys over from one of the Ableton user groups with pushes and laptops doing workshops, and kids could just come in and play on this stuff. And, they were making slime down the other end of the tent. There was some kind of soldering workshop for kids. And I was like, you can't give kids soldering irons. This is crazy. But they did, and it went really well. And then we're up the other end with the Simpson music stuff. And I put a 6U case together just to try and, I'll pull a picture up, just to try and make it simple. And I had a little slider controller, and just that and that case. It was literally take the lid off the case, plug it in, flick power, turn the speaker on, ready to go. I was using things like grids to make the beats. Tuesday from This Is Not Rocket Science to make the melodies. It was all tied to those sliders, so it was like saying to a 7-year-old pair of boys that had just ran up wondering what this thing is, just turn that slider up and that's the bass drum pattern. And they go, what's a bass drum? I'm like, listen to this low pitch thing, this like really deep kind of thing. And we turn the speakers up, and they'd be like, oh, right, that's pretty cool. I'm like, turn the next one, and that'd be the snare drum rhythm. And it's so instant. I mean, the patch took a while to set up, but it was such a fun system for quick music making and so interactive. I'll play a little video. There's a video of I don't know how old she is, but this little girl kind of channeling her inner Aphex Twin or Square Pusher on this thing. Let's see if it plays. And that's like 2 minutes of her coming up to the thing and going, what's this? And it's like, yeah, this is a modular synth. And she'd go, what is it? And I'm like, let's just play with it first. We'll get into it afterwards. and it's great. And I went home with so many ideas from it as well. These little riffs and moments that had happened, and I was like, this is what modular is. I think Dual Tracks in the chat said it's present. You know, it's a present. It's there. It's been there in the moment. It's interactive. It's the interface. Yeah. I don't care if it's a digital module or if it's analog, or whether the circuit hacks back to something from the 70s. You know, yeah, I love all that stuff. I love a great vintage filter and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of not what it's really about, I don't think. For me, modular, it started as like my baseline for dance tracks. I was like, I did just want to clone stuff, which I don't think is the advantage of modular at all. But I was like, I want Moog style oscillators, but I want a Roland kind of filter. And sometimes I want to use like a Korg style filter, and it's cheaper just to get another filter rather than buy an MS-20 or you know, that's probably not the way. Well, it's certainly not how I use it now. It's not the most interesting way to use the system.
It's definitely not how it's how I might think about it in my mind. Hence, when like the Roland, I guess the 200 system or the 500 system came out, I said, "Oh, now I can have the Roland sound." And then I was like, I think I talked to you a little bit ago about getting a new filter, and I was like, "Well, I want a Moog style filter, right?" And like the more I think about it, you know, over time and how I use my actual modular, I can't really say that I think about a sound as much as I think about a function. You know, I don't need to have the filter from that time period and that, you know, XYZ exactly, you know. I don't necessarily think of that. I think of, you know, ooh, you know what I can't do and I'd really like to do, and I think of a module that works in that context, you know. But you know, you can do a lot of things. I'm surprised Korg hasn't moved into the Eurorack space with some of the vintage style things from, say, I guess like the Maxi Korg, or say the you know, the mono poly. You know, I'm just surprised they haven't done that.
Yeah, I am too. I feel like, well, Moog as well, and I guess Roland are, but if Korg came in and said, this is the MS-20 circuit in its vintage glory, not a modern equivalent. And, you know, people talk about through-hole versus surface mount technology, and I've had very well qualified engineers that are also amazing musicians that have an ear for this stuff. They can see both sides of the coin. Tell me that electrons do not know the difference between a through-hole transistor and a surface mount transistor, and that in blind tests you cannot tell, even being very critical. But whatever. But if Korg played into that and said, you know, this is the original through-hole MS-20 filter, they'd just take that market. It's almost like, and maybe that's why they haven't do it. It's a respect for what people are doing, because anyone cloning an MS-20 style filter would then not sell many, or it would certainly hurt sales. And I think Moog's the same. If they were like, this is the Model D low pass ladder filter in 12 HP or whatever, it'd be like, right, yeah, wow, that's the one to get. You want,
every other company making that quote module, I'm not saying they would just go away, because the Moog would be so much more expensive that then everybody would be like, well, you know, it becomes the whole Behringer versus Core or Moog thing, where it's like, well, why don't you just get the Behringer version? It's the same thing. And it's like, yeah, there's just there's different markets. Some people want the name Moog on their module because it has this sort of I don't know, this perceived value, you know? And so you're going to sell a lot to those people who just want a Moog regardless of if it sounds exactly like some other, you know, I don't know.
For my through-hole versus surface mount comment, I've just been called a subatomic particle racist. That's Mark in the chat that's often here. I quite like that. I feel like that would be a good t-shirt until maybe not. Subatomic particle something. It'd be good at, maybe not racist, it'd be good at album title, Subatomic something. It'd be a good kind of post-punk band, Subatomic whatever. You can run with that in the chat, Mark. I'm rambling. But we'll kind of open it up to just some random questions. I've got a few more questions that I've pulled out of the chat. But to kind of round off the kind of getting started thing, what do you wish you knew that you didn't when you got into this?
How addicting it was, and
Yeah.
how you better not have a credit card with any amount on it because it will be gone very quickly. I mean, I would say the first thing that I probably should have done was I should have purchased a larger case to start, because case prices really eat into module prices if you're going to upgrade. You know, I sold my case for like, I think like $250, and I bought it for like $380 or something. Not bad. But what I did was, I wish I had just bought a larger case. I don't know, maybe it's not everybody, but to me, filling up the case has this addictive thing to it. You want to fill up the case because you want to have, it looks good. You know, it's the visual, you know, kind of thing that you have with it. And so I know that Benjamin asked what's case size, what I recommend to start with.
Yeah.
I say, I think the 104, 2U 104, or the 6U 104, whatever it is. I think it's a 6U 104. Yeah. That's a fair size case if you know what you're doing. When I bought my case, like the two Mother 32s, a Mother 32 is like 60 HP. Yeah. That's a little ridiculous if you're going to buy an 84 HP as your case size. It's just like, come on, like, what are you doing? Because then modules with any sort of functionality are all, you know, 10 HP or more, and then you're done, right? So 104 is good for 2 rows of 104. But that would be my number one thing, because I probably spent way too much money on cases, which I could have just had to spend on modules. So buy a larger case than you think you need, and just, if you don't fill it, fine. Don't max out your credit card trying to fill it.
Yeah, Bagel of the Future said more smaller cases is more satisfying filling them. There's a lot to be said, and I've said this a lot of times, about using restricted small systems as subsections, as musical tools. There is, but I think when you're starting out, you know, if you just had a single 84 HP skiff or something, you're not in a position to best put together like a really great 84 HP skiff. No. You know, years into it, and I think, like you said, having 2 rows at 104, maybe like the Dope for 9U, which is 3 rows of 84 HP, it, you know, it gives you room to play around. And then if you want a skiff, you want to just go, I just want like an amazing control surface, or I just want to build like an ambient generative thing, or a drum box, or whatever. Once you've got that experience to pull from, I think it helps. And I think focusing as well, it gets said a lot, but, you know, buy a handful of modules and really learn what they do. Let them influence what the next module you buy is going to be. Not chasing after that, oh, I really wish I had the Moog filter. I really wish it sounded like an MS-20, or, you know, let the modules dictate what function's missing. And that was the whole thing with starting the free module challenge thing that me, Matthew, and Greg did with Modular Podcasts a while ago, that you can make music with free modules if you select them and learn them very well. And forcing there's been a thing recently, a few of me and my friends have been trying of, it's kind of like the free module challenge, but there's an actual older lecturer of mine from Huddersfield University said he really liked the free module challenge, but he was drawing names out of a hat to make. And he said to me, the one he's got at the minute, and he's determined to do something of value, whether it's just a sound that he samples to spread across the keyboard, and he got a multiple, a mixer, and a VCA. And I was like, you're screwed. Like, what are you going to do with that? And he was like, well, I can probably try and feed it back on itself with stackable enough that it's going to make some sort of sound, and then maybe I'll sample it, or it will become a bed for something else drenched in reverb or whatever. And I really like that, because I was like, what are you going to do with a VCA and a mixer and a multiple? Like, what? And he was like, I'm going to do something. I'm going to give it a go. And I'm sure he did do. He would pull amazing results out of all sorts of things. Nathan in the chat, I've just caught my eye then. I miss Modular Podcast. We've all been doing all sorts of different things. Matthew moved and had internet issues. A few of the shows we tried to do were really bad. connection. Greg's been busy on some other things as well. It's not gone entirely, and we are just planning out some shows. And it will be a proper podcast. I promise at some point I will put it on iTunes and anywhere else that you get podcasts. It's not very well named for a video show. In fact, it is a podcast. If you search modular podcast, it is around. There's just only one episode. It's something I keep forgetting to do. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling with that. But yeah, so get a bigger case than you think you need. I think that's a good point. I went with a DUT for 9U, just a low-cost 9U. I felt like that was a good start. 84, yeah. 84 HP, 3 rows.
That's a good size. I think, you know, if I went back in time, when you start out, you just don't know what you really want, and you don't know, second, what you really need. If you, at least for me, an 84, like a 9U 84 would be huge if I knew maybe I shouldn't get a Mother 32 or 2 Mother 32s. There's something that can do this smaller and more efficiently, like better. I mean, I think somebody put up, I'm going to put the 80 HP Behringer into the 84 HP rack. And it's like, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. That's why I say get a bigger rack, is because what you don't want to do, in my opinion, I guess, is you don't want to buy modules based on HP. That's where you start to really limit the functionality, specifically because you only have size. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've done it before where I look at my thing and I say, well, I've got exactly 8 HP that I can spare, that I can switch out a module. And then I go on Modular Grid and I type in filter, and then there's a module, the module I actually want, which is 10 HP, but I only have 8 HP left. And I'm like, I can't get the one that's perfect for me. I'll just buy this other filter. It's like, you don't want to do that. You want to have the space to buy what you really want and not just be counting HP every time.
Mm. You don't want to buy modules based on HP, needs to be a channel slogan. Yeah, I feel like people do go a bit, you know, like it's like with the 2 HP and the Pico stuff. Yeah, they're great space fillers, but you put 6 2 HP modules next to each other, and that is not a fun system to play with. No, but I also don't think it's their intention. You know, when they're demoing that at trade shows, they have blank panels between everything, and I guess it's kind of a statement of, look how little space we're using and how much sound we're actually creating. It's the equivalent of a full row of whatever. They're amazing space fillers, but it's got to be playable.
Yeah. So if anyone would know about there's the 2 HP drum modules, the 2 HP hats and the 2 HP kick. If you put those 3 modules right next to each other, I mean, you know, get out your tweezers, because you're like, they're just so close together. But at the same time, the 2 HP modules fill a specific purpose. Like, if there's one company that just said, you know what we need to do to sell modules? Make functional modules in literally the smallest HP possible. I mean, they did the thing that most musicians who have modular need, which is just 2 HP size modules, regardless of what they do. They need everything that a modular can do in 2 HP.
Yeah, I need an LFO. There's one. I need an envelope. I need an analog oscillator. But they do. Dual Tracks mentioned, you know, thinking about like the Picos and the Pico DSP from America Synths. It's great for a lot of things. It is. And the 3 HP, it's obviously half the size again of 2 HP. That makes quite a difference. But again, the Pico case as itself, it's a little fiddly. You know, there's no getting around that. But it's an amazing system in that space. And I think dotting them around, and if you're just going to plug cables in and CV them as well, it kind of doesn't matter. If you have a section of your case where that's all just kind of sequenced and just plugged in, it doesn't, you know, that's not so much of an issue. If that's the main thing you're playing with, like filter cutoffs or folder depth, or the main thing, it is a little fiddly. So I'll open it up to just kind of random questions from anyone. Benjamin asked earlier, does Noir have a modular grid layout that they could take a look at?
I do. I don't know what it's called though.
No, well, I'll either add it into the live chat if you find it, or I can put it as a comment at the top of the video afterwards. Rock Guitar Power asked, any tips on getting super accurate pitch when using a MIDI keyboard? He's using an MST MIDI to CV with a dope for high-end VCO and can only get accurate tuning for an octave or so. It could either be the calibration of the MIDI to CV interface, or it could be the calibration of the oscillator. If you don't have a single reference for something that's just working right, that's a really hard question to answer. You know, if you could say this oscillator tracks perfectly with this interface, but this one doesn't, we could isolate the issue. There will be little trimmers, usually little blue things with a little screw slot for you to just get a screwdriver in, and advice online for how to calibrate oscillators. D2Dope is fantastic over email. So if you email, I think it's support@dopefor.de, but you'll find it on their website. Contact them and mention it. I would also do the same potentially for the MST MIDI to CV interface, but maybe start with the oscillator. Have you had any issues with calibration or anything?
Me?
Yeah.
In terms of oscillators?
Yeah. Does everything just track okay? Have you ever had to get the little screwdriver out and play around?
No. If anything, I had an issue with my SV1 like a year ago. I made a video about the SV1 and how it interacted with it, the interface with another module. And, you know, Pittsburgh Module actually like wrote me and they said, hey, if you want to like switch out your module, like we made some upgrades to the SV1, they just made it, I guess, more stable, and they added like some better I guess, I don't know what you call it, but just some more finesse to the module. And I just switched out mine for that one, and that was the only issue with tracking I ever had was with that. The Modular 32s always tracked just fine. And the only other oscillator I have, yeah, the Erica Synths Wavetable VCO. I mean, you know, it tracks fine. It's digital module anyway.
The thing, just a really quick rundown, do search and find some stuff about this to do it properly, but just generally, if you play a note in, tune the actual oscillator. You know, you play a C on your keyboard, tune it to a C, play the octave above, and if it's flat or sharp, you then use the trimmer to adjust so that octave's in tune. Go back down and play the C again, retune with the coarse and fine tune on the front, go back up the octave again, change the trimmer, and there's a little bit of back and forth until you get your tracking right. That generally is what you're doing with those little trimmers. User-friendly music asked, how do you get into producing for other artists?
Oh, for me?
Yeah, I guess so. I've not done much production for others, very minute bits. I've engineered stuff, but I've not produced artists particularly. So yeah, for you, I guess.
Well, okay, so this is a long story short, but when I was about 18 or 17, I lived in a place where there were a lot of bands, right? And that was a different time, right? It was before electronic music had really come back. This was still in the time of like Blink 182 and Sum 41, a lot of bands, right? Yeah. And that was who you produced for at the time, right? You either were producing for bands or you were producing for Britney Spears. It was one of those. So I went on to my local Craigslist, which everyone has, and I remember I just put a post back then, and I just said, hey, are there any artists or bands who want a producer? And I said, I'll do it for free, right? This is when I was super young. And like I met some of the most like helpful people of my career from that, right? And if there's anything I'd tell anyone who wants to produce for other artists and bands and whatnot, I hate to say that it's not about your talent level, but it kind of isn't. Like, you have to know the people, right? If you don't know people well, then you might as well be sitting in your bedroom doing nothing. And maybe that works for bands like Owl City or something, you know, just one guy sits at home. I guess that may be an old reference, but I honestly met people through just knowing them. Going out. If you go out enough, you're going to meet people. And if you meet people and they know what you do, then, you know, you're doing it for them, right? Obviously, you have to meet, you know, I met lots of people from labels. I met lots of people, you know, through other things, but it's kind of, I'm not saying it has nothing to do with your talent level, because when kind of the phone rings, you have to be able to answer that call and be ready. But if you just sit in your bedroom and make music thinking that the world's going to find you, I mean, you're kind of sorely mistaken. And I'm an introverted person, so when I go out to things, I'm like kind of socially awkward, but I know how to kind of say, hey, what do you, you know, I can, you know, let's work together. And then you might work together. And sometimes it comes to be something and sometimes it comes to be nothing. But, you know, you just have to kind of, I think artists like producers.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the getting into the thing in the first place was, I was covering stuff like that at one point in my teens, like covering Green Day and Blink-182 and Sum 41. And there was a time where I wore leather pants and thought I was Slash from Guns N' Roses, and I had long Jesus hair, and there's loads of embarrassing stories. But I remember starting to record my own band, and we just got like a Tascam 4-track or whatever, just something cheap from somewhere. And it was too loud, so we put the SM58 that we had in my sock drawer, because my parents used to let us rehearse in my bedroom as a young teenager. So it obviously sounded terrible. And I remember gigging with slightly bigger bands, which just came from being out there. We were out there enough that it was, you know, hey, we've seen you guys at all these shows, cheers for coming or whatever. Like, oh, we're in a band, can we support you at some time?
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
Just because they'd seen us 10 times round every time they came through the city or whatever. And I remember talking to them about recording, and their vocals always sounded better than us. I mean, they could sing way better than any of us in the group as well, which obviously is the main thing. They had some talent for that. But they were like, oh, yeah, we use compression on the vocals. And we were like, what's compression? You know, so we then went away and did that. And the same with like recording people. It was just a case of, I felt like I needed some distance from recording. And this is really early on for me, but I felt like I needed distance from recording and playing my own stuff to try and get better at the recording. So I just said to my friend's band, I'll do this for free. Yeah, if you let me do it, like just let me record a couple of songs. And you know, it sounded terrible. I don't.
Yeah.
But you know, I did it, and someone might, you know, they had a demo. So then it was oh, who did you demo? Oh yeah, it was Ben that plays drums in this band. Oh yeah, I'll speak to Ben. You know, they'll send me a message on MySpace. Hey Ben, you've just done Johnny's band. We really need a demo to try and get more gigs. And this is super low level, like making no money from it, and not gigging, not charging. But it's the best thing to be. And I think even if you just want to make synth music or produce electronic music, go record a band and get in and figure out how to, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or whatever your character traits are, to manage yourself in that situation and have to work for other people. I don't mean go create loads of tight deadlines and stress when you're starting out, but there's nothing like kind of having to cut your teeth with a band and, you know, on cheap gear and then try to improve the gear. You know, the world of kind of hip hop drew me in strangely at some point. I've always kind of liked hip hop, but it wasn't what I was doing. It tended to be like guitar bands and then dance music. It was always kind of two against each other as I was growing up. I guess in that situation, find a rapper and say, can I make you a beat? And they might turn it down. They might really like it. I'm trying to convince, and I imagine a lot of this audience is way above this level. I don't mean to sound condescending in any way, but the work I do at college, we get kind of 16-year-olds in up to about 23. And they'll be like, man, I'm listening to Kendrick and Drake and I want to make beats. Like, I want that lifestyle. And I'm like, you've got to start grinding. Like, that doesn't come from nowhere. Yeah, but there's loads of like women and money in the videos and man, their lifestyle. I'm like, well, for one, that's not their lifestyle all the time. So forget about that. And that isn't the reason to do it. But there are people around the town that we're in that are gigging on a level just above you. And if you can make a beat that they're happy with, you're on the right track. And you will lift and elevate with everyone else. I think it's about finding a people, as you say, in a group, and be able to, through association, improve. There's nothing like, and it's a famous saying that I'll probably butcher it, there's nothing as good as being the worst person in the room.
Yeah.
You know, feeling like you have to work. Like, and I've been fortunate to play in bands and stuff like that where I'm like, these guys are fucking amazing. Like, they're really on it. I've got to step up my game to do this. And same production wise, I've loved being in studios and recording as a band, but then saying, you know, can I record the bass player, and then letting me control the desk, and the rest of the band are like, man, we've paid for studio time, just let the engineer record the thing. And I'm like, no, I've got it, let me do it. And you know, I might have wasted 200 quid because I didn't hit whatever properly, or but it's just, yeah, throwing it out there. Other than that, it's hard. I think just trying to reach out to people online and say, you know, I make electronic music, can I make music? It's kind of difficult. Everybody's doing that. It's super saturated. I think the only way to produce for others is to put yourself in a position where they're going to start to notice you.
Yeah.
And then
you're totally right. You can't, if no one knows you exist, well, that's kind of the end of the sentence. No one knows. You know, social media is great, right? But I mean, you started on YouTube how long ago?
Might have been 5 years, might be a push. But thinking of that, if someone says I want to make synth videos, and I get this question all the time, and it's basically, some people think that I've got some kind of glamorous, just play with modules all the time, that's an amazing life, that's what I want. Some people have a much better idea of the work involved, and they'll ask how it starts. I'm like, well, I made one video, right, and it was terrible. The second video, I instantly started messaging companies like, I want to make demo videos for you, because no one's doing it, no one's documenting what's going on, and as a consumer, I can't buy and understand what your products do because you don't make a video, you've not written a manual. And I didn't say all this, I wasn't as negative as this, but that was basically my whole point of making videos, was I want to get into this. Raoul's World of Synths is making dope for videos. Milo Melodies had 2 videos on 2 filters that he was selling, and he'd made those videos to sell the filters. It was, here's this filter and what it does, and it was part of an eBay listing, I believe. So I was like, I need to document this. Someone needs to start doing it. And I'd never used a camera before. It's evident I hadn't. I borrowed an SLR from the school I worked at. I used to use the school PC after hours to edit because I didn't have a computer at home. But going back to the story, the companies ignored me, or the ones that replied were like, yeah, we get people saying they'll do stuff for us all the time for free gear or whatever. We're not going to send anything. So I was like, all right, I'll make a couple more videos. And I think it was Jesse at Anna Modules, like, I'll give you 10% off. And if you make a video and I like it, we'll talk after that. But the first video I had like 21 views. So everyone was right to just go, no. Like, why would we respond to this guy? He's not part of any of this. We don't know who he is. And it just took some grinding to do it. And I think that going back to the kind of working with other people, there's a lad at the college I work at, amazing guitarist, playing a lot of rock and metal. And he's like, there's no bands at a decent level for me to join. It's all a bit more kind of amateur, just starting to gig. And he's technically way above a lot of what's going on. And I'm like, well, have you got an Instagram page? Like, make yourself known. Because if people are then coming to you, I mean, it would be better if you could do it in person, but I was like, if you can have a presence online and people will then start to see you, or enough that you can at least connect with people in cities nearby, that's a start. That's something. But yeah, thinking of me in the video thing, like, it was a ton of work. Like, I used to go into work at 6:30 in the morning, because that's when the school opened. I'd work for 2 hours till 8:30 when the actual school started. School would finish around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. I'd stay till 6:30, which is when the building closed. And I was always really pissed because the guys, the janitor or whatever, they would walk around, make sure all the doors are locked, all that kind of thing. He'd be like, oh, you're still here? Yeah, I'm locking up. It's time to go. And I'd be pissed that I had to go home. I was living with my parents at the time. It's kind of first job out of uni. And then I found, oh, my friend's brother's got a really good PC. Maybe I can go around there. And we'd sit and we'd play on the Xbox, and like, we'd take it in turns. So while 2 other people played the Xbox, I would edit. And then I'd go, and then we'd kind of cycle around, because I felt quite rude that I was like, look, can I come and kick your brother off his computer? And it just turned into this, oh, Ben's coming around, he's going to use a PC and we'll just play some Xbox or whatever. But it was a ton of work, like just so, and that it just completely consumed me for so long until it built to something. And then it was like, right, I should probably buy a camera, and I should probably I can't keep doing this. This is ridiculous. But it at least got me being able to do what I initially set out to do, which was to try and help people getting into this in the same position that I was. It accelerated my learning. People started offering modules for videos fairly quickly once quality went up a little bit. You know, it took me a while to get the quality there, but then once there was a bit of presence as well, obviously that helped. And over years, it's just built and built from there. But it's really hard, because I think I've spoke to User Friendly before. He's a Patreon supporter of mine. Sent me some really good music recently. Actually, I've just mastered his EP. There's some really cool sounding stuff on there. And if you're in a town where kind of not much happens, I guess that's really hard. I don't know if the answer is move or start spending time with people near there, or I don't know.
It's hard. I live in Los Angeles, right? I mean, I live literally 10 minutes from, you know, Hollywood Boulevard, right? And so I have a lot more advantages than, say, someone who lives in Kentucky, you know, United States. Like it's what it is there's everything you might want is here. So like you said, getting out there and just being, I hate to say, like, being friends with people is the best way to make anything happen for you, but people like to work with people that they know and people that they trust, right? You know, unless you're some sort of if you're sort of some kind of crazy musical like genius who's kind of a douche, you know, people will work with you, but you're like it's like Kanye West, right? Like, say you're like Kanye and you're kind of a douche sometimes. Well, people will work with you still because you're Kanye and you have that sort of bravado, you have that sort of reputation, right? But if you're just Joe Schmo from down the street, right? You can't just go and be some kind of person who thinks you're so great and can help this person out. Oh, great. Now everybody's getting mad because I said someplace in the Midwest. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to know people. And the same thing for, like, starting a YouTube channel. I mean, we've kind of sort of talked about this before, but, like, I think that there is a total different mindset about you and I and people in YouTube and making videos. And it's that we sit around and really have fun all day with modules that are super fun and free, and it's like we're living this sort of life where we're making it rain with, like, modules, like, all day long, you know, and then we're like throwing the modules to the audience, like it's you know, it's kind of this interesting lifestyle. And people want that. Like, I think it's funny, people really want that lifestyle. I mean, YouTube's like a monster now, and you and I both know that YouTube it's the center of all things. If you want to be seen or you want to be noticed, YouTube is the place to go. Instagram with searchable hashtags is really good too. You can really do a lot of work on there. But yeah, the YouTube space, and I've said it a lot of times before, the videos that you put up, the early ones from years and years ago, are still videos that you probably know, like, they get, you know, a couple dozen views a week just because someone's searching this video from 5 years ago. And same, you know, and that one of those views is going to be me, as I'm like, oh, I get this module I don't know about. I have to search it, and you're the person to be there, right? And you provided this encyclopedia of everything that I needed to know. modular. We're off the subject, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all have to do actual work. You know, I do a lot of video work for other clients when I'm not making videos. And some companies are music companies, some companies are, you know, just beauty companies, and, you know, but I get to make music for the companies. Like, that's the fun part about how I work is, well, I'm a video creation company and you need music. So half the time I get to make the music for their videos anyway. It's a video service. They think they're paying for the video, but it's all included. If I can make the music, it's easier than me pulling it from a stock library anyway. So it all kind of works together. All the skills I gained over the years all became kind of the, you know, amalgamation of like the YouTube channel, working with other people, helped me work with companies and blah, blah, blah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I said a while ago, I was going to take random get off topic. Totally fine. I mean, the way I got into just another kind of tail of the kind of work thing, and again, it's not, I'm not trying to blow smoke up my own bum, you know, it's no ego about this, but the way I ended up working with Loop Masters was that I just randomly, when the DivKid thing started, with me and my friend Andy making kind of electro house 2011-ish, it was two of us. His cousin is a tattoo artist. At some point I should post her link. She designed the DivKid face, and we just messaged Dom Kane, he was making presets and stuff for the Moog products, like all the slim fatty stuff. That's Dom Kane. He's based down in Cardiff in Wales. Okay. So not too far from me. I realized that he'd done something for X for Records and Deadmau5 or Steve Duda at one point. And I was like, let's just ask him to remix one of his tracks, like just really naive. And he was like, yeah, this track's pretty cool. I'm doing a gig in London, and yeah, I'll remix it. And, you know, we sent him out a standard 50-50 split, kind of butchered together crappy contract. We were running our own label. And then it was like, oh, the kick drum in this is quite nice. And it's a bit different to like what's going on at the minute. What is it from? And I was like, oh, I made it. And he's like, how many kicks have you got that you've made? I was like, about 12, and a few like hand claps and very basic synthesized drum stuff I'd been playing with in the computer. And I was like, I'm going to start working with Loop Masters as a kind of sub-label on there. Would you make a sample pack? And then it was, yeah, I'll do it. So I sent some samples back and forth. He was into it. But it was called Drum Construction, the first pack I made. I don't think it's there anymore. I think Loop Masters pull like really old packs off. But it was over 1,000 single shot drum hits. And it's not horrible because it's, you know, it's better than some other day jobs, but it was, yeah, we need another 100 kicks that are all a bit harder and clickier. Or it was at that time where sample packs were just bulging. It was just about number. Yeah. And they were all unique. It wasn't a case of I just rebutchered the numbers and, you know, doubled them up and just EQ'd them differently. So it took a long time, and there will have been overlap just because 500 kicks there's going to be, you know. And then it was, all right, now we need like 200 snares, 100 hand claps. It'd be good to have 50 closed, 50 open hi-hats, about 100 miscellaneous percussion sounds. And it was a ton of work, but it did really well. So then I was in a position to say to him again, I have an idea for a pack that's slightly different, or would you take this? Or, you know, and it went back and forth. I've done a few bits for Sample Magic. But once you're in that thing and once you're there, you can kind of fish, you know, kind of push your work around a little bit. I've had this pack that sold really well. Yeah. I was lucky that it did. It might not have done. It hit at the right time, I think. Dom was really onto, and still is. Dom Kane produces some great music, and he does some video stuff as well. But it was just a case of like, if I didn't really naively just email him and say, do you want to remix this track? Way shooting above my station, it probably wouldn't have happened. Yeah. So it's kind of, you know, there's all sorts of odd tales about stuff like that. Yeah, a few people in the chat, so, you know, it's hard to post stuff for the day job. I would say to that, if you start thinking of it like a business, which isn't what you necessarily want to do with your hobby or something creative, but I used to use a program called Gremlin online, and there's loads of others. I think Hootsuite and all will do this, and just schedule posts. When we ran a label, Monday morning was what's going to happen this week. And we were on like a gap year from university, just running a label, seeing what happened. And I'd spend 2 or 3 hours on a Monday morning scheduling every single post that would go out that week, about, you know, and at the time, like Throwback Thursday was a big hashtag on Twitter. So it's like, let's find a really old track that we like and try and get some traction by sharing someone else's music. And it did. You'd post something and someone's like, oh man, I remember that Chemical Brothers tune. I remember when it came out, or hearing it at Glastonbury for the first time. And, you know, just a couple of hours a week. And as I'm having to try and work smarter and pay for my kid in the house and spend more time making videos and build income, and this be something I can keep doing, I'm having to think more and more like that. I need to maybe spend a day a week just sharing stuff or planning stuff or doing admin, or I don't like it. I don't like invoicing for things, you know, samples, production work, videos, whatever. But if I don't do it, I'm not going to get paid. So, you know, you kind of have to adapt how you approach this stuff a bit. And I think if I was starting a new project, thinking about the whole, like, getting started with modular, what do I wish I knew? I wish someone would have kind of said, spend a day a week just looking after what it is that you do. Don't make content for a day a week and go and do. Because I'm really guilty of that. I'll get indulged in filming and playing and patching. And then it's like, oh, I've got to edit this. I have to listen to my voice for hours while I edit this thing. Yeah. And then I'll do the video, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm keen to go play on the modular again. So I start patching, and then, you know, the actual business side of things needs looking after. And I didn't know any of that years ago, but I kind of did.
I think you're exactly right with the whole, you know, the balance and things like that. You know, when you're trying to, you don't want to. I mean, I think when you make videos and you're talking, and I hate the sound of my own voice, just like most people do. Yeah. And when I took a break back in March, the break was really because I noticed that I hadn't made one piece of like fun music, just in general, just fun, that wasn't for, you know, some video job I was doing, or for just myself, or for, you know, artists or whatnot. It was like, you know, I just had to like stop and kind of be like, let me go back to really finding how to enjoy what I was doing before. You know, and that's hard because you get in sort of the cycle. I don't think a lot of people understand sometimes when you're doing YouTube and things like that, is like, just responding to comments is a lot of work, and messages, and you want to respond to everyone because you realize how important it is to build a community. But I just don't know how many hours a day sometimes people want to do that. You know, when they start a channel and they're small, it's so much fun because you're getting, like you said, like 27 views, and you just enjoy the whole process, versus getting 100 comments in a day. And while you want to be uniquely responding to each of those, it's very hard because it's sometimes it's just not possible. So there is like this strange balance of becoming like a creative person, and then also, you know, I actually schedule out the commenting responses to my videos. Like, unless it's something right on the spot, I have to actually kind of put a note in my calendar, like 30 minutes of this, of just responses, so that I kind of make sure I get to people. Because I think you and I both know that the community that you have is more important than anything. The people who watch the videos are like, when they have great responses, like those are the people who really make it fun. So yeah, it's kind of not really about gear, because like in our personal life, we don't like someone to come and say, hey, your gear is cool. And that's kind of what the comments are. It's like your friend who plays with the same gear, even though they may be 10,000 miles away or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing about making a reminder, that I'm massively on that at the minute. Had someone ring me up about guitar lessons. They found me on a local site. They're like, you're in the same postcode as me. Will you do lessons at home? I'm like, no, I rent some studio space now. Do a little bit of private teaching. I will ring you back this week. So straight away, I was like onto the calendar with about 5 different time reminders, you know, set it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, ring this guy back. But the reminder will go off 2 hours before, an hour before, 5 minutes before, and there's another reminder the day after. And it's the same with the YouTube comment thing. I do try and respond to everyone and everything, but it just, like, I can waste a morning just on social media. And I don't mean a waste in terms of talking to people. The community is everything, but, you know, sitting and flicking between Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Oh, I should go take a picture of a module just to keep kind of in the loop and regular with my posts. And it's like, oh yeah, I should probably go reply to YouTube. And then I'm like, oh, I've got this Patreon thing going. They're giving me money every month. I have to respond to everything. And ideally before anywhere else, they should be priority. So I'm like, right, I'll go do that right now. And then it's like, man, I need to go make a coffee. And then I come back and like half the morning's gone.
Yeah.
It's tricky. The cool filter bro comment from Dissonant. Yeah, the gear comment stuff. What I really, really like, just to kind of round off me rambling about how I work, is when someone says, like, I don't have this piece of kit, but I've just tried it on mine and it sounds amazing. Or the company that I've made a video for says, I've never heard it sound like this before. You got things out of it that I haven't heard before. And that's a real kind of buzz for me. I really like that. Same community wise, when someone you know's been engaged, and I like it when people are critical as well. It's nice when someone can criticize, but from a good place. They're like, you should look at doing this way, or this thing didn't make sense, or you were talking too fast, but giving, you know, all that kind of community stuff is amazing, but it's really easy to get lost in it.
Yeah, you're right. They're constructive comments that are like helpful. I can't tell, like when I was starting my channel, and I will say my channel has gotten way bigger than I thought it had. I looked at it recently because I remember when I started making the videos more frequently and better, the channel kind of exploded in terms of subscribers or the things like that, right? When I was thinking about how I had made videos before, because a lot of people remembered, like, I started the channel just doing 1-minute synthesizer reviews, which I want to say, so I can clear it up, so because people always yell at me and say, 1-minute review, 20 minutes long. And the point was, okay, I got the video's not even posted anymore, but there's a video game channel by the name of Pro Jared, and he used to do 1-minute video game reviews. And if you watch like the first video I did, which is no longer up, it was literally like I did literally exactly what Pro Jared said on like his 1-minute video things. And the problem is I did that 1-minute video thing, and then someone said to me, I didn't learn anything, like 1 minute, like what? So I kept the same title and I just kept going with the series. And I guess, you know, the series is kind of dead more or less anyway.
No, but it's also that thing. I've always taken it as that kind of like, you know, being sat with a friend or them tapping you on the shoulder and be like, here, let me come and tell you about this for a minute. And it's not. Yeah. That was my take on it. It's a kind of, come and sit down for a minute. Let me tell you about this thing.
People get so triggered off of a 1-minute synthesizer review that's actually 19 minutes or whatnot. And, you know, I learned so much from certain people about how to make videos useful, you know, and I think I put a Twitter post about it, but Oscillator Sync, he makes some really good videos about functions on synthesizers that you don't necessarily really know like exist, and they're really like well thought out, you know. And sometimes his videos are like really long, and I remember like I looked in the comments and people were like, dude, like I can't sit through the whole video for you to explain this. And so I took inspiration from him and said, you know what I need to do? Take the things that he does and then can make them more concise so that someone can really like understand it like a lot quicker, you know? And Oscillator Sync, his channel is really great. A lot of the Korg stuff I used to look at.
Yeah, there was a thing on like recipes for envelopes or something recently that was good. The essential envelope recipes, there it is. That was good. He does some good videos, definitely. It's the YouTube. It's weird. It's recognizing that you can't please everyone as well. I occasionally get comments saying, I'm just starting out and none of what you said makes sense. You need to zoom out and show me the whole thing. And I'm like, well, I can't, because this system's such a mess. I can't redo a row so it has the sound sources and the processors and the modulators all right there with the Mordax data to show you the signals. It's just not possible. I do some of that for Patreon as kind of patch breakdowns where I zoom out, but I'll put the camera kind of here trying to capture it. And I'm like, oh yeah, and then I was using this filter. Let me just pan right. You know, it's a big system. And I'll do that for Patreon, but if I do that, I'll then get comments of people saying, yeah, I know how to plug a saw wave into a filter. Like, you didn't have to tell me that bit. And,
yeah.
And then someone will give me some quite advanced thing. They're like, oh, you know, if you take what you did, but then you invert the signal and do this, you can make this, or there's this really cool, weird way to rebuild this signal path. Or, and it's like, yeah, but you get that, and a handful of people get that. That's another thing entirely. So I'm kind of trying to think of how I can, I don't know, make a tutorial series or something that caters to a lower level. I'd say my videos are fairly intermediate. I do definitely skip over some basics in just trying to get a module demo done. So it's hard.
I do agree when you say they are more intermediate. I guess that's why they work for me sometimes, you know. Someone said, Rainbow Ninja said, the only thing about some of your 1-minute videos in the beginning is it felt like you just read out the product description. And he said, like, but much better now. And I think, like, that's very true. YouTube and making videos, the weirdest thing is, like, it's something where you improve, but the problem is it improves so slowly sometimes that even you yourself don't realize that you've gotten better.
Yeah.
But the audience definitely knows. You know, if someone looks back to, like, especially, I guess maybe, when did I make the videos for, like, the Pittsburgh Modulars, like SV1, right? I think I probably read, like, I obviously have to say the details of anything so that people understand what it is. But I wasn't necessarily making it as easy to see my approach to how I used the piece of gear. And when I came back from the break and I did the Make Noise Pressure Points video, that was, like, one of the first times when I really was able to get how to make a video more personal, philosophical, and at the same time explain to a person, like, the things that they can do with a piece of equipment, right? Where in the beginning it was, like, it was pretty cringy videos that I did early on, and I was having fun with it, but at the same time it was like I was listening to everyone and trying to do everything, because people be like, tell me all about it, and I'm like, okay, make sure you make a list of things to talk about, and then it's like, wait, no, play the synth more so we can hear it. Okay, play the synth more. No, the oscillators, just play the oscillators wide open. It's like, oh, how long do you want this video to be? Like,
and it's recognizing that, you know, everybody makes content differently. I'll go to Superbooth. It was 61 videos we made at Superbooth this year. Just a ton of work and a ton of editing when I got home, even on not the best equipment. I went out with a Zoom Q8, which is kind of like a bad GoPro strapped to a decent audio interface. Really convenient and lightweight, but I wish they'd worked with a good camera company to get a better lens and sensor. But whatever, it's not like the videos I do at home. But I will still watch Superbooth videos. I go, and I'm in a fortunate position that I know a lot of the manufacturers now, so I feel like the angle I have is that I know these people and I know the gear, and we can talk properly about it and maybe have a bit of a laugh on screen as well. It's not just a dry magazine that's never spoke to them before. We're at this trade show, tell me what you're doing. So, but I will still watch other people's videos. You know, I'll see Nick at Sonic State and we'll say, first day at Superbooth, it'll be what's the kind of hot things? What have you heard? You know, who's give a really good demo? What should we check out? What should be priority? Because ultimately, then like me, are trying to cover everything at a trade show. And I'll still watch Nick's videos, even though I filmed a video with a guy the week before, you know. And it's kind of recognizing that. It's funny, Dissonant in the chat said that DivKid had a very dry presentation in the beginning. Still great videos, but you seem much more relaxed and comfortable now, and you'll even laugh. I totally agree. Like, I was mixing my vocals way too low because I didn't want to hear my voice. Definitely not as confident, both in myself or the gear, because I wasn't that far into modular the first video that I made. I'm still fairly dry compared to a lot of kind of character-driven channels. And that's fine. That's just what I do. But it's definitely way better years in. And again, like you said, I didn't really notice that until I started looking back.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Looking back now, it's like, oh no. Like, I remember it was literally, I think it was one of those videos where, like, now you're better at it. Like, you're more comfortable. So even though you're reading sometimes, you're like, yeah, this is fun to read. And obviously when you're having a conversation, you're just not super dry or whatnot, right? But in those early videos, I remember it was like it was bad. Like, it was really bad. And I have still like super stage fright, and I've always had it. And that was the reason for like the glasses, the sunglasses in my first videos. Was like, I was just making YouTube stuff is not easy. Like, it causes you to be super self-conscious because you're watching yourself, and you realize that like thousands of people watch the videos, and you're just like, oh, like, I don't want them to be seeing me and hearing me.
Yeah, and then as you sink into yourself, that's when the content starts to change as well, and you start mixing the voice that bit lower. We'll look to kind of round it up. I mean, we stopped talking about getting started in modular quite a while ago, which is very common for these live streams. There's always a great series of people in the live chat, and we just kind of go off and hang out, which is just as fun. For those that did come for getting started in modular, if you're still here, just if you're not someone that watches our content and you just came for that and you've somehow stayed through another hour's worth of content, do ask any questions either now or in the comments. I will, on this video, I'll answer everything. If it's something I can pass questions on and get some answers if it's not for me. But yeah, let's kind of give it a couple of minutes for the last few questions. So what's coming next? What, either video-wise or related work-wise? What are you up to?
Well, I'm trying to start the series. How do I stop? I guess over here is the what the fuck is this? The Emu Proteus, right? It's and I haven't seen a ton of videos about Emu products or whatnot. And so I'm going to do more about some of the Emu stuff and it's sort of a different thing where I'm kind of going in the real world and searching through like stores for like really esoteric pieces of gear and whatnot. And I'm going to do a video about that. I guess the Strymon Magneto. And then someone asked, why so much Pittsburgh? Last question, why so much Pittsburgh? I don't know. It just seems to work. I bought the system interface, and I think that, you know, it doesn't have everything, and there's not always things about it that work perfectly, but everything seems to work pretty good Pittsburgh wise. I have good luck with their modules.
Yeah, fair enough. I've had a couple of Pittsburgh bits that I've liked. I remember their filter. I think the Lifeforms filter is very similar. It was at Matt Tech Modular's place. Matt Tech was really helpful when I got into modular stuff, who now runs a store over in Manchester. And that filter sounded amazing. He had about 7 filters. He was like, I need to sell. So he wasn't running the shop at the point. And was like, I need to sell some filters. Which do you like? And I was like, man, that sounds really good. He was like, no, that's not going. Then kept going back and repatching these filters. Like, man, you need to sell me that. And he was like, no, that's not going anywhere. Ed Random just asked seriously what kind of output, because he asked about using output modules, and I wasn't sure if it was a joke or not, because the kind of obvious answer is plug the cable in and then take the output, but there is a lot to get into with impedance and gain matching and all that kind of stuff. What kind of output? Depends what you want to do. I record through a Praxis snake charmer, which is 8 inputs that will give me 8 balanced line level signals out on a DB25 cable, and I come out into my interface. So I've got 8 outs. The Vermona has the transformer isolated one, sounds fantastic, XLR in and out. I run that as a stereo send from my mixer and interface. So if I want to use modular effects, I've just got a really high quality stereo in and out, and they just come in on certain channels. The WMD is great if you need headphones and some line level 1/4 inch to give to a sound guy at a gig. Or do you use any kind of output yourself?
I only own the Lifeform system interface, which only has like the 1/8 inch outputs and whatnot. Okay. And I will say that it is noisier than I would like. I think trying to put 6 channels that close together with all the functionality, there are some times when I get unacceptable amounts of noise, especially when I'm trying to record. So I am trying to look to getting something with 1/4 inch outs, like something from WMD or whatnot, just because I have too much trouble sometimes patching out of it into a recorder due to like unbalanced issues and interference. So it's okay sometimes. Sometimes I have to run it through direct boxes to make it work. It's more hassle sometimes than it's worth, but I'm figuring it out. So that's what I use, just straight into an interface.
Yeah. This is quite an important question from Rainbow Ninja, because I don't think modular is right for everyone necessarily, or not right for every situation. How do you explain to people who just see the flashy lights and fancy knobs that modular is not for everyone, and how do you make sure that it's the right route you want to take? I think trying out VCV rack probably, because it's free. And you can realize that, every time you want to make a bass, do you really want to have to plug the oscillator into the filter, into a VCA, and re-put the envelopes back in? You can, of course, leave the cables, but some people really like that. I love that. I love it. Sometimes even just leaving the case off and kind of just getting a patch going and then going and flicking it on or turning it on and then, whichever way I start. But that's not for every situation, which is why, it doesn't make it into every bit of produced work that I do. Sometimes I just need a sound quickly, and maybe it needs to be recallable, in which case it's not for you.
No, that's a big thing. You're right. Going and saying that, because when you turn on the modular and you're like, oh, cool, like it did the thing and the moving and that's fun and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it really isn't, not all music requires, or a modular can hinder a lot of types of music when you're trying to make something, and you should just understand that going in. But the flashy lights and the knobs are very enticing, so I get that.
Yeah, I suppose if you buy secondhand, the secondhand market's quite strong. It's usually about 70 to 80% of new. If you buy secondhand, you can probably try it and not lose much. I've always thought if I get a piece of gear, maybe I pay £200 for it and I sell it for 170 6 months down the line. It's like a rental charge. That costs me £30 to have that piece of gear, to maybe use it in something or not. That's not a massive loss. Maybe £30 is a bigger issue to someone else, or fronting that money. It's not for you if you can't afford to put enough together for it to be interesting. A case and 2 modules is probably going to be nothing but frustration. Maybe then semi-modular is the way to go.
I thought that the ladies were going to be impressed by the modular when they would come over. Little did I know, I was very wrong. So
the complete opposite effect.
I have not gotten laid less than after investing $2,000 in the modular.
It's the time you commit to it as well, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, preparing for it to occupy a lot of your headspace, you know, playing modular Tetris on modular grid, dreaming about what you can put in a case. But I'd really like, if I was looking to get into it now, I think just to round it back to what this was about before we kind of just freewheeled with it, I'd probably spend a lot of time in VCV rack, a lot of time on modular grid. There's a ton of information on forums like Muffwigler if you're into forums. Forums were never my thing. That was the first one I ever joined, to just because I wanted the information about modular stuff. Probably going semi-modular and getting a taste for it. Price-wise, that would have made more sense. Like you said, get a slightly bigger case than you think you need, because you're going to butt up against filling a small case and then having the next purchase to be another case rather than another module. Buying secondhand so that you can kind of flip it for the same amount of money. And then work-wise or hobby-wise, just I would absolutely encourage everyone, introvert or whatever, to try and immerse themselves in the scene or to try and make one happen. I felt like there was no one in the UK into this stuff when I started. I was really wrong. And the first event I held a year or so into it, I held in Manchester. Now, I have no connections in Manchester. I don't know any promoters. I don't know any venues. I had someone help and potentially screw me a bit on money that they'd paid to rent the venue or not. I don't know if I gave them too much or whatever. But I wanted to try and pull people together, and Manchester seemed to be the place that had anyone interested in this stuff. The dude did that event, and it was like, oh yeah, I'm up in Leeds or I'm wherever, and I'm like, oh, that's where I'm from. Why don't we just do one there next time? And I do know people, and I can find a venue, and we've grown Modular Meets Leeds, which is in a couple of weeks, to be kind of the biggest or one of the biggest kind of community modular events. I didn't think there was anyone around me at all into this stuff. I'd try your best to immerse yourself in some kind of scene, online or otherwise. I guess that kind of rounds it off for me.
Yeah, wherever you're at, please do that. Please look around for people in real life who also share your love for modular synthesizers. I think that we often think that there is no one else who is like us, and they just are thinking exactly what we are. So I do encourage it, just like Ben said, just, you know, it'll also enrich your life so much more to know someone in real life who cares for something as much as you do.
Yeah, and the doors that's opened, you know, like I see Ross Lamond every now and then. I will chat on the phone, and we very rarely talk about modules. Or Scanner, Robin Rimbaud. I'm lucky that there's a large list of people whose work I really admire that I can just pick up the phone and talk to. But we don't talk about modules all the time.
Yeah.
And my partner Megan's always amazed that, you know, I'll see someone and they'll ask about our little girl, who's 10 months old a minute, and I'll be like, oh yeah, such and such, that's how Lorna was. And she's like, really? And she, you know, she just thinks that's all we do is talk about Sims all day. It's definitely been a good thing to try and, I've never been massively introverted because I guess I was gigging at a young age and kind of had to get used to it, but I certainly didn't want to be a YouTuber in any shape or form. That was never part of the plan.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what everyone should try and do, but yeah, put yourself out, try and immerse yourself in it if you can. Yeah. I've wildly just gone off on one at this point. Thanks to everyone that stuck with us. Any questions, do ask them. On this video, I'll make sure I get you an answer to whatever it is, whether that's me or not. Yeah, cool. I think anyone in New York want to get a drink and talk modular? Yes, go see anyone near New York. Try and go see Dissonant and talk about Modular.
I wonder how the scene of modular is in New York City, actually.
There's Machines in Music, which Mike Verbos at least started. I don't know if I think he ran them all, but he's now in Berlin, and I think that stopped. So I'm not quite sure what it's like.
I think it would be cool.
I think the West Coast got it better than the East Coast.
Think so?
It seemed like Portland and now LA is like, that is modular.
Man, I could just imagine having an awesome, like, kind of a warehousey, kind of like a 90s modular. You know, I mean, maybe people aren't there necessarily for the modular, but there's going to be people there. But it's just a dope party, kind of like an industrial kind of a thing. NYC just seems to be a beautiful city for those kinds of underground things.
Yeah, isn't that how Jojo Mayer's Nerve started? It was the Flying Lotus, low-end Theory Nights, and Jojo Mayer was getting into production. Jojo Mayer, the drummer, and he was like, you know, I play drums, I should be able to play these jungle breaks, and then that's how this amazing trio Nerve started. And yeah, I imagine that, and I imagine there's probably a big thing for, you know, it not all being modular heads, but people into more experimental stuff or sound engineering or film sound designers, or there's a ton of like overarching groups of people looking into this. I'm sure there's a scene for most people.
I mean, the rave culture may have died, but I think that I mean, well, at least for me, but you know, I just would think it'd be just an awesome place for that. I mean, here we just sit in the park and play modules, which is great, but you know, there's something about a nightlife that involves, you know, some distorted bass and modular.
Yeah, Barlow says we should all move to Berlin. Yeah, Berlin seems to be the place to. The thing with Berlin is, and I don't know if it's still that, but I had someone tell me, and again, last tangent, I promised, and then I'll shut up, that the local government or council were funding a lot of arts projects and getting people in. So this kind of bohemian lifestyle of moving to Berlin, managing to live on little money. I don't think it was that expensive, at least comparatively to other major cities, and do some kind of project. I think was a big part of that. I know the whole, and I was into this at one point, super cheesy trance kind of scene, but Rob Hordijk, who makes 5U modular, and he was responsible for a lot of the Nord gear actually. In the Nord modular stuff, you know, some serious engineering chops behind him. And he was saying that the whole trance thing in Amsterdam, like Chesto and Armin van Buuren and all those kind of guys, God knows who's doing it now, it was like a Dutch government funded thing, that the kind of party scene, and it was just, so that's why it thrived, and because it had some injection, and I think Berlin had that kind of cash injection from somewhere to enable these people to do this stuff. But yeah, go to Berlin. If anyone can get to Superbooth, I know it's expensive to fly, certainly across the Atlantic and from anywhere outside the EU. It's an amazing event full of so many different people, and you'll find people that have been in Berghain for 36 hours and they come to Superbooth on a come down because they've just been listening to dark techno for that long. And it's, you know, there's a whole weird and wonderful world. Try and get to Berlin for Superbooth, anyone that kind of wants to engage. But yeah, very last tangent for me. There's no more questions, I don't think. So yeah, cool. Thanks for your time. We've spoken a little bit online, but I feel like we've got to know each other quite a bit more as well, which is always good.
It's a lot of fun.
I look forward to the Emu stuff. The video is cool. How far away is that? Is that quite close, or is that's just the next kind of big project?
It's the next big project. I'm trying to see if it works in terms of like a series, because I've been trying to do more series videos that make sense. But this involves like a second camera person to make the story kind of make sense behind me purchasing the gear at the pawn shops and kind of working with whatever I kind of pick up. So it's a larger, it's kind of larger than just getting to make it, but hopefully the biggest thing I'm working on right now is if the biggest announcement, quote unquote. I think you know Jexus, right?
Yeah, that I think it kind of makes Jaxis.
Jexus, yeah. He hasn't made a video in years and years and years. And he probably has the most comprehensive synth. I guess he just did tons of stuff. Yeah, WC Ologarb, right? He's kind of like low key, like synth guru, weird guy in a way, right?
Yeah.
And I've just been going back and forth with him for like the last 2 months, trying to finish up a series for you know, the next episode of Great Synth Mysteries. But it's a lot of work, you know, and so that's like the biggest big thing. And I'm hoping, you know, he's a guy who kind of stays hidden.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to kind of, you know, make that work.
Yeah, cool. Anything anyone wants links to or anything, feel free to ask. And cheers for joining in. Cheers to the live chat for making the kind of last hour what it is. It's fun just to kind of hang out and have people to hang out with, both Stephen and yourselves. Yeah, cheers. And speak soon.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.